Hey guys, tonight we slip into the world of cradles and crowns, a place where your body becomes a political tool and your milk more valuable than gold. The scent of boiled linen and marjoram clings to the air. Somewhere in the distance, a baby is crying, not yours, but he might as well be, because tonight you're not a princess, not a noble, not even a servant. You're something stranger, more intimate, and somehow lonelier. You're a royal wet nurse, and you probably won't survive this, not emotionally, anyway. Because while everyone loves a cooing baby, no one talks about the woman behind the lullabies, behind the leaking breasts, the homesickness, the broken sleep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's listening across the globe. And whether you're lying in bed in Kansas or curled up on a train in Tokyo. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The summons comes on a chilly morning, just as you're gathering firewood outside your thatched cottage. A rider in court colors, deep mulberry and bone white, pulls up and doesn't dismount. He reads a scroll, mispronounces your name, and informs you flatly that your milk is needed by the crown. There's no asking, only announcing. You try to look composed, though your heart hammers like a blacksmith's forge. Your neighbors pretend not to stare from behind their shutters, but you'll later learn they talked for weeks. Some say it's an honor. Others mutter about stolen children and royal curses. One elderly woman hisses, "Don't let them take your soul with it. You have a baby of your own, just a few months old, plump, pink, ravenous. You've barely healed from the birth, and your back aches constantly. But you bundle your child in a few belongings, kiss the lintel of your door goodbye, and climb onto the cart waiting behind the rider. You don't even get to hold the reins. That's the first sign this isn't your journey anymore. The road to court is long, lined with crows and mist, and the occasional noble carriage that doesn't slow down when it splashes you. You sleep upright, arms curled protectively around your baby, afraid someone might take her in the night, but no one does. Not yet. At the city gates, you're inspected by a steward who sniffs like you're a crate of fruit. "Good hips," he notes. "Still leaking?" You flush and nod. The cart is waved through, and suddenly you're in the capital. Past towers and bridges, bells and gongs, spices that sting your nose. But you barely notice. You're trying to soothe your child, whose tiny fists open and close like sea creatures searching for comfort. You're ushered through the servants' entrance at the palace. No grand arches or courtyards for you, just a back hall that smells of starch and goat soap, where the floor is always just a bit too wet. A woman with no eyebrows and a clipboard appears. She looks at you, then your baby, then squints at your chest like it might explode. She says, "Strip to the waist." And that's when the examination begins. They test your milk, literally. A midwife takes a little onto her palm, rubs it between her fingers, smells it, and finally tastes it like a vintner testing wine. Not too sweet. That's good. They talk about your humors, your temperament, your bone structure. You are no longer a person. You are a vessel. Historians still argue whether these milk examinations were medical necessity or thinly veiled cruelty. Some records describe them as sacred rites, others as humiliating routines with no real purpose other than control. You pass the test. Barely. Your diet. They say, will need improving. No more garlic. No strong cheeses. No black bread. You're handed a list you can't read and a sachet of herbs to steep in your tea. Cumin, fennel, and something that smells like the bottom of a monk's shoe. You are shown to your quarters, a bare, low-ceilinged room with a hard mattress, a basin, and a single window too small to crawl through. You're allowed to keep your baby with you for now, but only until the royal child arrives. She'll distract you, says the nurse supervisor, who looks like she hasn't blinked since the coronation. And we can't have your milk divided. You feed your child as dusk falls, but something's already shifting. You know your body is no longer yours, and your baby, she might not be either. Soon, that night. As the palace bells toll curfew, you lie awake, listening to distant footsteps, muffled lullabies, and the slow drip of your future reshaping itself, drop by drop, like milk on a cold stone floor. The next morning begins with a knock so soft it feels more like an apology, but the woman who enters your chamber is anything but gentle. She's a midwife, but not like the ones back home. No cracked hands or homespun shawls here. She wears a gown of bleached linen and a belt with pouches of herbs that jingle when she moves. Behind her trails a girl with a wooden stool, a cloth roll, and a ceramic cup. It's time for what they call the breast test. You're told to sit upright on the edge of your bed. Your baby whimpers in your arms, but the midwife makes a gesture and the girl whisks her away. Just like that, you feel a tightness in your chest, but it's not the milk. They unwrap the cloth roll and reveal a long, cold spoon, a feather, a tiny bronze scale, and a piece of parchment. This feels more like a ritual than an exam. She starts by palpating your breasts with clinical precision, muttering things like even texture, warmth, good, and no congestion. She pinches, prods, measures. When you flinch, she rolls her eyes. If you can't take this, how do you handle a teething infant with royal lungs? Then comes the milk collection. They squeeze out a few drops into the spoon. The apprentice girl records the color and thickness. Pearly. No curdling. You want to ask if that's good, but no better than to interrupt. Then, to your disbelief, the midwife dips her finger into the milk and dabs it on her tongue. She smacks her lips and says, balanced. Hints of almond. No bitterness. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. Yes, this was real. Historical documents from Renaissance Italy and the Tudor courts detail milk tasters, usually midwives, who claim they could detect illness, diet, or temperament by flavor alone. Some even believed a mother's mood could sour the milk. If you were anxious or grieving, the baby would suffer, and that's when the feather comes in. It's brushed lightly against your nipple to test sensitivity and flow. Apparently, if you don't react, you're either emotionally blocked or spiritually out of sync. You nearly swat the feather away, but stop yourself. You need this post. You've come too far. Finally. She instructs you to lean forward so she can check the direction of your letdown. You didn't even know there were preferred angles. Upward flow is auspicious, she says. Downward means heaviness of soul. Sideways. She pauses. Unpredictable. Historians still debate whether any of this had real medical merit. Some scholars argue that the breast test was simply a power ritual, a way for the court to remind women that their bodies, and, by extension, their roles, belong to the monarchy. You pass the feather test, the spoon test, and the mood evaluation, but just barely. You'll need tonics, she says briskly, and avoid pickled cabbage. It clouds the milk. They let you see your baby again after the test, but only for a little while. The girl hands her back like she's been borrowed and now returned, slightly wrinkled. You nurse her slowly, tenderly, your body still aching from the cold hands and the hot shame. But your daughter is hungry, and you feel the tug of her mouth rooting toward you like a flower toward the sun. Still, you know what's coming. By late afternoon, the nurse supervisor returns. She doesn't knock. The heir is arriving tonight. Be ready. You nod, but inside, your stomach turns. You've heard rumors that if your own child distracts your milk flow, the court can assign her to another nurse, or worse, to a village orphanage. You cradle her closer, memorizing the weight of her. Evening falls. Palace bells ring the hour. You're told to dress in a clean shift and sit on a low stool near a marble basin. The room has been cleared of your personal belongings. No more swaddling cloths. No more herbs from home. Just you in a bed with turned-down sheets and embroidered corners that say, Semper Fidelis, always faithful. That includes you now. You are to be always faithful to a child you did not bear. When they bring in the royal infant, you barely breathe. He is swaddled so tightly he looks like a bundled loaf, his head covered with a silken cap stitched in gold thread. You can't even see his face. Handle him only from the waist up, a nurse warns. Don't jostle the legs. Why? They don't say. You take the baby in your arms. He doesn't cry, just blinks up at you with wet-lashed eyes like two ink drops. His skin is pale and hot to the touch. You shift slightly, guiding him toward your breast. And just like that, he latches. There's an awkwardness at first. His mouth is unfamiliar. He sucks in bursts, irregularly, as if unsure whether he wants you or not. But then, with a soft sigh, he settles. You feel your body respond, milk let down, warmth, that strange ache of nourishment and loss all at once. This moment should be sacred, you think. Instead, it's observed by two nurses, a scribe, and someone who might be a court astrologer. They record the time, the angle, the number of sucks before the first swallow. The scribe actually nods. Acceptable. You almost laugh. Almost. Later, alone, you feel strange. You've crossed a line you can't uncross. This child is not yours, but your milk is in him now. Your body has been grafted into the bloodline, and no matter what they say, no matter how much they try to keep your name off the scrolls, something in you whispers. He knows you now, and worse, he needs you. They tell you that everything has been arranged. You will live in the east wing of the palace, where the ceilings are low but the guards never sleep. Your meals will be brought to you. You are not to go wandering. You are not to speak with visitors. You are not to pray aloud, sing, or mutter in your native tongue. Most of all, you are not to form a bond with the child. Your milk, the nurse supervisor says, must be given freely, but your heart must remain yours. Easier said than done. You're assigned a small suite, 2 rooms connected by a narrow archway, one for you and one for the royal child. You might have imagined tapestries or cushions or light from stained glass windows. But no. The baby's room is meticulously sparse, a bassinet carved with the royal crest, 2 small chairs, and a hanging talisman with tiny bells to ward off wind demons. You're told it was blessed by a monk who hasn't spoken in 12 years. Your own space is even smaller, but it's here that you're allowed to keep your daughter, at least for now. She sleeps in a wicker basket beside your cot, wrapped in the same cloth you brought from home, but her breathing is shallow. She's nursing less. And when you press her to your chest, she fusses. Not because she isn't hungry, but because your body no longer belongs to her. You're feeding another now. This is the quiet heartbreak of the royal wet nurse. Few talk about it, but historical accounts suggest it was common. Your own child often becomes secondary. The court demands your milk for the heir, and milk, as it turns out, is not infinite. Doctors at the time believed that emotional entanglements muddied the milk. If you loved your own child too much, it would divert the flow away from the infant that mattered. So, over the coming days, you're encouraged, then instructed, then finally forced to reduce contact with your daughter. First, they ask you to feed her less. Then they take her to be looked after by the nursery attendants in a different wing. You're told this is temporary. You nod. You have no choice. Your meals are timed to match the royal baby's feeding schedule. A bell rings outside your chamber. Ding. You wash your hands in mint-scented water, sit upright, and wait. Moments later, the infant is brought in, a fresh muslin cloth draped over his shoulder, his tiny body powdered and perfumed. A nurse logs the moment he latches. Another records how long he nurses. 8 minutes. Left breast. 5. Right. Acceptable. You are not thanked. You are not even acknowledged unless something goes wrong. And there is so much that can go wrong. You learn this the day the infant refuses to feed. He turns his head, grimaces, lets out a shrill cry. The room freezes. A nurse rushes forward and checks the baby's brow. Another snatches the cloth from your lap. "Have you been eating onions?" she snaps. You shake your head. "Only barley broth and goat milk, like the list says." The scribe squints at your mouth. Teeth coated in yellow. Is that ginger root? You hadn't even noticed the flavor. It was in the tea they brought you earlier. You're reprimanded. Your palate must be as pure as the milk, they say. That night, the doctor comes. Not to see the baby, but you. He's a tall man with fingers that smell like crushed violet leaves and something else. Mercury, maybe. He opens your mouth, checks your tongue, presses his cold hands to your abdomen, and says, "The humors are sluggish." He prescribes a tincture of goosefoot and ground pearl. He insists you chew willow bark 3 times a day. It will make your milk more tranquil. Historians still argue whether any of these treatments had real effects or were just attempts to control and pacify women in their most vulnerable state. Either way, you chew the bark. Meanwhile, the baby begins feeding again, almost greedily. You notice he has a small mole on the underside of his chin, shaped like a fish hook. You're not supposed to notice things like that, but you do. You can't help it. Each night, when he's taken from your arms, you sit alone and think of your own child. You wonder whether she's warm, whether she cries for you, whether she still smells your skin when she sleeps. You consider asking to see her, but the memory of the supervisor's glare holds you back. Instead, you sing softly into your own sleeve, lullabies from your village, the kind with nonsense words and half-remembered rhymes. You hum them under your breath, imagining the melody carrying across the palace walls like a message, like a whisper, like a thread. back home. One night, a maid hears you and reports it. You are forbidden to sing, the supervisor reminds you, especially in the tongue of your province. It unsettles the child, unsettles them. More like you swallow the song. You keep it behind your teeth like a splinter. The next day, a nurse checks your breast for signs of melancholy buildup. You're not sure what that means, but she presses hard enough to leave bruises. You say nothing. You just do what you're told. You show up when the bell rings. You hold the child, whose name you're never allowed to speak aloud. You smile when he sleeps, and pretend not to notice the way he curls into you like a heartbeat, remembering where it came from. And when you're alone again, you take the muslin cloth he drooled on and press it to your cheek. It smells like lavender and something else, like belonging. At some point, you stop counting the days. Time loses its shape in the palace nursery. Day and night bleed into one another. Blurred by candlelight and lullabies you're no longer allowed to sing. The royal child wakes every 3 hours like clockwork. And so do you, though wake might be the wrong word. You never really sleep. You just drift in and out of a half-conscious fog. Your body moving on instinct. Your arms lifting before your mind does. You are now a 24/7 human pacifier. They don't call you that, of course, not out loud. In front of others, you're referred to as the milk lady or the provider, sometimes the vessel. Never by your name. That part of you is gone, left behind with your cottage, your neighbors, your daughter. Your days are governed by bells and charts. The royal physician has created a schedule so exact it would make a monk weep. Feedings, weighings, cleanings, rest. Your urine is tested twice a week. Your pulse is recorded every morning. You are not a person. You are data. Even your dreams aren't safe. You're woken once in the night to be asked whether you've experienced milk-stirring visions. Apparently, some physicians believe that erotic or emotional dreams could alter the quality of your milk. One even whispers, "Do you dream of the child?" and seems disappointed when you say no. Historians still argue whether this obsession with control came from genuine concern for infant health, or from fear that a wet nurse might hold too much emotional power in the royal household. After all, you spend more time with the baby than the queen herself. Speaking of the queen, you haven't seen her yet. You've heard she's young, pale, bird-like, prone to migraines. Some say she resents that her son will never remember the woman who bore him, but might always recognize the one who nursed him. She has not visited the nursery, not once. She sends gifts instead, embroidered bibs, a small carved whistle, a painting of a cherub with impossibly clean feet. None of it smells like her. None of it feels real. One morning, you arrive for the usual feeding, and the baby is fussy. He turns away from your breast and screams, a thin, reedy sound that sets everyone on edge. Two nurses spring forward. One checks his gums. Another waves a dried herb bundle over his head. "Spirits," she mutters, "or stomach wind." The physician arrives within minutes, trailing assistants and scrolls. He asks you what you've eaten. "Boiled turnips and millet gruel," you reply. He narrows his eyes. "Any cinnamon, clove, orange peel?" "No." You say quickly that only a little chamomile. He writes that down like it's a confession. You're instructed to stop drinking all herbal teas. Instead, you're given a grayish concoction said to stabilize the womb. Smells like pond water and disappointment. Still, The baby feeds again by evening, and everyone relaxes, except you. You're learning how quickly things can turn. One sour burp, one red rash, one unexplained fuss, and suddenly every eye in the room turns to you like a knife. There are no sick days, no time off. Even when you develop a low fever and your joints throb like they're full of gravel, you are still expected to show up and provide. They won't accept a substitute. The royal child has bonded with your scent, your rhythm, your temperature. You are indispensable until you're not. You hear whispers about another wet nurse. 2 years ago, she caught a cold. The baby caught it too. He survived. Barely. She didn't. They burned her mattress and threw her shoes into the moat. You start washing your hands obsessively. You hold your breath when anyone sneezes. You become terrified of your own body, its weakness, its betrayals. You pray, even though you're not supposed to. You whisper to the stone walls, asking them to keep you strong. And sometimes, just sometimes, you break the rules. Late one night, between feedings, you sneak into the baby's room without ringing the bell. He's sleeping, tiny fingers twitching in a dream. You pick him up, hold him against your chest, and hum. Just one note, low, gentle, from the back of your throat like a memory. He doesn't wake, but his little hand curls into your collar, anchoring himself like a barnacle on your soul. You rock him gently and murmur nonsense. You forget the rules. For a few stolen minutes, you let yourself feel it. Not duty, not biology, not performance. Love, that word no one dares say. And then the bells ring again, and the spell breaks. You place him back in his cradle, adjust the sheets, and return to your room like a ghost who never lived there. You're halfway through a bowl of boiled lentils when the knock comes. Not a polite tap this time, but the kind that signals urgency wrapped in protocol. You rise, wipe your mouth with your sleeve, and straighten your posture like you've been trained. The door opens, and 2 guards flank a woman in velvet, with the posture of a hawk and the expression of someone who has never been ignored in her life. She announces herself as Lady Elsamere, mistress of the inner household, and she tells you, without asking, that today you will be sworn to secrecy. Royal proximity demands royal discretion, she says, as if it's a line she's repeated to hundreds before you. No letters, no whispers, no glances out of turn. You may not speak of the child, not to your family, not to a priest, not even to yourself. She hands you a parchment filled with delicate writing and enough wax seals to tile a floor. It's a formal oath, and the language is chilling. Your tongue, should it loosen, may be cut metaphorically or otherwise, according to the king's will. You don't ask what otherwise means. They prick your finger to mark it in blood. You don't wince. A priest, not the friendly kind, murmurs a Latin benediction. The air smells like candle wax and iron filings. When it's done, they leave you alone again, and for a moment, the silence feels heavier than before. Historians still debate how binding these secrecy oaths truly were. Some argue they were symbolic. Others believe they were deadly serious. One 15th century account mentions a wet nurse who disappeared after joking to her sister that the infant prince had his father's pout. The sister was later seen wearing a widow's cap. From now on, you sleep with your mouth closed even in dreams. But the restrictions don't end there. Next come the rules about your body. You're forbidden to touch anyone not sanctioned by the palace. That means no hugs from your child, no comforting strokes from other nurses, no handshakes, no shared cups. Your skin belongs to the monarchy now, says the steward who brings the decree, as if he's offering a blessing. You may not leave the palace grounds. You may not bathe without supervision. Your laundry is inspected, boiled, and returned with small tags bearing tiny initials you don't recognize. Likely someone's job is simply to smell your clothes. You're beginning to feel less like a woman and more like a walking milk urn. There's even a rule about mirrors. Too much time spent admiring one's reflection, they claim, promotes vanity and disturbs the milk. The single mirror in your chamber is removed one morning while you're out walking the garden paths, accompanied, of course, by a chaperone. You don't recognize yourself in puddles anymore. You've forgotten what your hair looks like when the wind lifts it. You only know the parts of yourself that are inspected, the roundness of your belly, the firmness of your breasts, the clearness of your eyes. Nothing else seems to matter. Still, the child feeds well. You've gotten used to his rhythms, how he fusses before midnight, the little hiccup he gives after the third swallow, how he seems to prefer the left side even though the right produces more milk. You've stopped trying to understand these contradictions. Babies are like tiny kings, irrational, but irresistible. And yet, you're never truly alone with him. There's always someone in the room, sometimes two, often more. A midwife records every moment. A nurse rearranges the pillows. A silent page stands in the corner with a quill and a glassy stare. The baby's gaze drifts from your face to the rafters and back again. He doesn't know who you are, not in the way adults do, but he knows the feel of you, the scent, the warmth. One afternoon, as he dozes in your arms, one of the nurses clears her throat. "Do not rock him," she says sharply. You stop. "He must not be coddled," she adds. "He is a prince, not a pet." You nod, but your arms ache to keep moving. The silence that follows is so full of unspoken things that it buzzes in your teeth. They fear you'll fall in love with him, or worse, that he'll fall in love with you, that he'll seek your arms when frightened, your voice when restless, that your peasant lullabies might stick in his brain longer than Latin prayers, that your heartbeat might become his compass. They are right to be afraid. You don't love him yet, but you could. It would be so easy. Already. His fingers grasp your shift when startled. Already. He roots for you even when full. Already. His sleepy gurgles soften something ancient and maternal inside your chest. That night, you dream of your own child again. But this time, she doesn't come to you. She stands just beyond reach, watching you cradle the prince. Her eyes are huge and still. You reach for her, but your arms are full. You wake to the sound of bells. Another feeding, another morning where you belong to someone else. You begin to feel the days not in numbers, but in patterns. The same light slanting through the nursery shutters, the same bell signaling morning milk, the same cold basin for washing your hands, the same folded linens, the same wary nods from guards who now recognize you but never speak. You've become a fixture, like the stool beside the cradle or the scent of chamomile lingering in the air, necessary but invisible. Your body, however, is in constant conversation with the palace. You are monitored with a diligence usually reserved for livestock or precious machinery. If your milk is even slightly too warm or too slow to flow, a small army of herbalists and court physicians descends. You learn to anticipate their questions. Did you sweat last night? Any dreams of drowning? Have you touched rosemary? Have you felt unusually attached? That last one makes you hesitate. You always say no. The real answer is tangled in the fabric of your sleeves. They adjust your diet again. No vinegar, no red fruits, no spices except cumin, always cumin. Apparently it opens the ducts. You're served barley gruel, boiled pears, and something called milk broth that looks like fog and tastes like defeat. You miss garlic. You dream of pepper. But you're told your cravings are unladylike and disturbing to the child's constitution. There's no rest, no reprieve. You nurse through fevers, headaches, and the creeping numbness of sleep deprivation. They don't let you skip feedings. They simply adjust your position, fan your face, and feed you crushed snow if you start to faint. A royal baby cannot wait. Historians note how tightly wet nurses were controlled, not just their work, but their biology. Court documents from multiple kingdoms include entire treatises on milk temperament, hot and dry, cold and moist, spirituous, or dull. You're expected to memorize them, even though they contradict each other with maddening flair. Your own instincts are rarely consulted. Once, when the baby pulls away and fusses, you suggest a softer swaddle. The supervising nurse clucks her tongue. You are here to nourish, not advise. You bow your head. But later, when no one is looking, you loosen the wrap just a little. The baby sighs in relief and falls asleep mid-feed, still latched. You smile, barely. That moment, quiet and secret, feels like defiance, like love, in a way. Still, you're not alone in this strange hierarchy of the womb. There are other wet nurses, assigned to the children of dukes, viscounts, and visiting dignitaries. You pass them sometimes in the corridor. There are glances, silent nods, the occasional whisper passed like contraband. Some are older, some younger. One woman, missing a front tooth, grins and mutters. We're cows with gowns. Another laughs so hard she snorts cumin tea out her nose. There is, despite everything, a dark camaraderie. You learn the unspoken rankings quickly. Wet nurses for royal blood are highest. Of course, you are one of them, but only barely. Some of the others treat you coolly, as if the prince's rank has yet to rub off on your skin. There are rivalries. A nurse from the Northern Territories claims she once fed a child who became a bishop. Another insists her milk has a calming effect on nobles. You try not to compare, but it's hard not to notice when one of them is given a fresh robe while yours is still patched under the arm. One day, you overhear a conversation between two nurses as you pass through the garden. They speak in hushed tones. They say she wept while feeding him. Foolish. She'll be replaced before harvest. You don't know who they're speaking of. You don't ask. But that night, you weep into your pillow, silently, carefully, without shaking your chest too much. You can't afford to sour the milk. Even crying becomes a risk. You develop little rituals to cope, stroking the embroidered edge of the baby's cradle, whispering the first line of a lullaby into your palm before each feed, twisting your pinky just so when the bells chime. It makes no sense, but these tiny acts remind you that somewhere beneath the titles and oaths, you still exist. And then there are the letters. Once a month. You're permitted to send one letter to your family, though it must be written under supervision and sealed with the palace stamp. You write them slowly, choosing your words like stepping through mud with slippers. The work is steady. The child feeds well. I am healthy. I hope my daughter is thriving. You never get a reply. You're told the village post is unreliable. You begin to doubt whether your letters ever leave the palace at all. Sometimes you ask about your own child, just once or twice. The nurse supervisor always responds with the same words. She is being looked after. No details, no names, not even a token smile. That phrase becomes a threadbare comfort you rub raw in your mind. She is being looked after, but by whom? Where? Does she still cry when she hears your lullaby in the wind? No one tells you when it happens, but one day, you realize you've started answering to a title instead of your name. The prince's wet nurse. That's what the midwives call you now. The steward, the cooks, even the page boys. Your birth name has slipped into the shadows, replaced by your function. You could argue, you could correct them, but what's the point? You are what you provide. You are what you produce, and you produce well. Your milk is considered sound. Your behavior measured. Your temperament docile. All high praise in this world where compliance is currency. You are given a longer rest cushion between feedings, a new pair of felt slippers. One nurse even nods respectfully at you in the corridor. For a moment, you feel almost secure. That illusion doesn't last. It begins with a lullaby. You're cradling the baby late one evening. He's fed, drowsy, nestled against your chest. His little hand clutches the cord of your nightgown. You hum, barely audible, a tune your mother once sang to you. The melody is simple, just a few notes repeated in a rocking rhythm, comforting, harmless, except it isn't. A nurse enters mid-hum. She freezes. You freeze. The air between you becomes brittle. "What was that, ya?" she asks sharply. "Nothing," you say too quickly. "Was it dialect?" You hesitate. "It's just a tune from my village." The next morning, you're summoned to Lady Elsimir's quarters. Her room smells like clove pomanders and judgment. She doesn't look up from her embroidery as she speaks. You were warned about singing. You try to explain. It calms him. That's not your decision. She lifts her eyes to meet yours. They are the color of overcast sky. Your voice is not required. Your milk is. There is no punishment, not formally. But later that day, your chamber pot is removed and returned only with a new wax seal. Your laundry comes back stiff and sour-smelling. The nurse who usually smiles when handing you the baby now avoids your gaze. It's a warning, a quiet one, the kind that doesn't leave bruises but stays under the skin. Historians still puzzle over how strictly speech was regulated in royal nurseries. Some suggest it was about maintaining uniformity of language. Others argue it was to prevent imprinting, the fear that a baby would mimic the speech patterns or accents of someone outside the noble class. Either way, silence becomes a tool of survival. You stop humming altogether, but your thoughts get louder. You start to notice things you didn't before. The way the baby cries differently when one nurse holds him versus another. How he calms fastest when placed against your bare skin. How his heartbeat seems to sync with yours during those quiet minutes after feeding. These are observations, instincts. They rise uninvited. You know his moods better than anyone. When he's overtired, he won't cry. He flails. When his stomach is upset, he turns his head to the right and groans softly. When he's content, he taps his heel against your thigh, like a small drumbeat of approval. You are forbidden to name him, but in your mind, he has one, a small secret name you never say aloud. A name that fits the shape of his face, The curve of his breath. This is dangerous. You try not to love him. But one afternoon, you catch yourself kissing the top of his head. Just once. Just lightly. His hair smells like milk and violets and something ineffably royal. You jerk back, heart pounding, hoping no one saw. They didn't. This time. But love is a crack in the dam. It leaks. You notice how your hands tremble after he's taken away each evening. How you replay the moment of feeding like a lullaby stuck in your chest. How your arms feel wrong when they're empty. You begin to fear the weaning, not just for him, but for you. Still, the performance continues. You smile politely. You nod. You keep the schedule. You drink the cumin broth, chew the willow bark, and pretend your soul isn't quietly aching in the corner of the nursery. And then one day, something small shifts. The prince gets a visitor, a woman, noble by her clothes, but not quite royal. She carries herself like someone used to being overlooked, and you learn she's a cousin of the queen, or perhaps a niece. No one's quite sure. She watches the baby feed. She doesn't speak. Afterward, she approaches you, not with suspicion, but curiosity. Does he always feed that well? She asks. You hesitate, then nod. She studies you. You seem steady. You're not sure if it's a compliment or an observation. I suppose they chose well, then, she says. Not everyone can do what you do. You blink. Do what? Give everything, and take nothing. She leaves before you can answer, but her words stay with you. Because it's not true, is it? You've given everything, but you have taken something. Not jewels, not favors, not even a name on a scroll, but this child, this strange, milk-drunk prince with soft eyes and stormy lungs. He is part of you now, and you, though they'll never say it, are part of him. Nursing a royal baby may be intimate work, but it is never private. Each feeding takes place beneath the gaze of attendants who never speak unless to correct. Pages hover like shadows. Scribes dip their quills in anticipation of something noteworthy. And the air smells constantly of starch, lavender, and control. Today, the baby feeds slowly. His eyelids droop, his fingers curl around the ribbon on your sleeve, and his breathing deepens. He's content, but you're not. Because this time, there are visitors. 2 bishops and a foreign ambassador. All men, all powerful, all pretending not to stare as your breast becomes the center of the universe for 15 very long minutes. You were warned it would happen. Feeding in view of distinguished guests is a symbol of royal vitality, they said. Your modesty is a footnote to the lineage. They offer you a linen cloth, but it's thin, nearly translucent, decorative. You might as well try to hide behind a pane of glass. You focus on the baby. His lashes flutter against his cheek. He's unaware of the spectacle, of the parchment being filled out in the corner, of the way the ambassador keeps clearing his throat without saying a word. When the child unlatches with a sigh, you carefully pass him back to the nurse and rise. You bow. The ambassador nods once. The bishops murmur approval. Then you are forgotten. Later, back in your chamber, you scrub your hands until the skin peels slightly. You feel strange? Disconnected. Like your body has gone ahead without you. Your chest aches, but not from milk, from shame, from being looked at, but not seen. Historians still argue whether public nursing was meant to celebrate motherhood or dominate it. Some point to portraits of queens nursing before entire courts. Others note how wet nurses bore the brunt of this ritualized exposure, treated as noble symbols and lowly tools in the same breath. You begin to understand that contradiction intimately. A few days later, the king requests your presence, not the prince, not the queen, the king. The summons arrives in a scroll with heavy wax and a nervous courier. This is a courtesy, not a command, the message says, but you know better. When the king asks, there is no refusal. They bathe you in rose water. They dress you in a fresh gown, pale blue with tiny silver buttons. A comb is passed through your hair for the first time in weeks. You're not sure what they expect you to look like. Less tired, less real. You're escorted through unfamiliar halls, past guards who don't recognize you, past tapestries so thick they seem to absorb sound. You enter a chamber with carved cedar walls and windows that filter the sunlight into gold. And there he is, the king, older than you imagined. His beard is neatly combed, his fingers heavy with rings. He does not smile. He studies you like a man evaluating a horse before a purchase. So, he says slowly, you're the one keeping the future alive. You swallow, bow. I do my best, Your Majesty. He nods, but it's more like a shrug. They say he feeds better with you than he ever did with the last girl. There was a last girl. You don't ask. You don't blink. The king steps closer. He doesn't touch you, just stands near enough for you to smell his cologne, something woodsy and sharp. Tell me, he says. Has he begun to recognize you? You hesitate. He responds when I hold him. Does he cry when you leave? Yes, you say, because it's true. The king frowns. That may be inconvenient. He turns away, dismisses you with a gesture, like a man waving off a draft of cold air. You are escorted out. No words of thanks. No acknowledgement of your role. Just the echo of your own footsteps as you walk back to your quarters. The next day, 2 new nurses are added to the nursery rotation. Neither speaks your language. One hovers during feedings. The other brings a different kind of broth. You've been inspected, and the king isn't sure if you pass. That night, you don't sleep. You sit on the edge of your bed, twisting a frayed ribbon between your fingers, replaying every word, every glance, every breath. Are they planning to replace you? Is this the beginning of the end? Your breasts ache with fullness by morning, not from delay, but from dread. You feed the baby as usual, but this time the scribes are more attentive. One notes the exact minute he latches, another times the swallowing rhythm. The new nurse fluffs a pillow, then adjusts it again, eyes flicking from the baby's head to your hands. You hold yourself as still as a statue. The child drinks deeply. He coos. He looks up at you with wide, milk-glazed eyes. And in that gaze, there is something that steadies you. Not safety, not affection, but familiarity. He knows you. And in a world where nothing feels certain, that alone is enough to keep going. You learn to keep your face unreadable. Feeding in front of bishops is one thing, feeding in front of spies is another, because make no mistake, some of the nurses, scribes, even the page with the ink-stained cuffs, they report things, not just about the baby, but about you. Did you linger too long with him? Did your hand drift to his cheek after he fed? Did you hum again, even softly? So you master the art of stillness. You smile in polite intervals. You keep your voice low. And you respond to questions with the verbal equivalent of shrugging. But they watch. And the more they watch, the more you realize what they fear. They don't want the prince to feel too much. At first, this doesn't make sense. He's a baby, a child of the realm. Surely he's supposed to be loved. But no, they want loyalty, not attachment. He is to obey his tutors, fear his lineage, revere the crown. Love, especially the kind that comes warm from a breast and sweeter than the court's sour wine, is dangerous. It makes him human. You are not here to make him human. You are here to make him strong, which means no dialect songs, no skin-to-skin contact beyond what is necessary, no whispered nicknames. You are not to call him my little fish, even though you do, silently. Every time you see the hook-shaped mole beneath his chin, one morning, you're mid-feed when he reaches up and touches your nose with two soft fingers. It's not a grab. It's a question. Your breath catches, and you say, too instinctively, too quietly, there you are. It's over in a second. He unlatches, wiggles, fusses. The moment dissolves, but not for the nurse standing behind you. You mustn't talk to him as if he's yours, she says, later, outside the room. Her voice is cold enough to crack glass. He is not. You know this. Of course you do. But there's knowing, and there's knowing. In that moment, you want to scream, not just for yourself. For all the women like you, milk-heavy, exhausted, sworn to silence and still somehow full of songs no one will let them sing. Historians rarely record those women. Their names are almost always missing, but every royal family tree is inked with their labor, their milk, their sacrifice, their heartbreak. You return to your chamber that evening to find your bed linens changed and your blanket missing. A minor punishment, silent, inconvenient. A message. You're being watched. You sleep cold. The next morning, the baby won't latch. He turns away, whines, squirms in your arms like he doesn't remember who you are. Panic prickles up your spine. The nurse snatches him, checks his tongue, his gums, his pulse. Nothing wrong, she says with a shrug. They turn to you. What did you eat? When did you last bathe? Have you been emotional? You answer all their questions. No spices, no skipped rinses, no crying. You don't mention the cold night. You don't mention the missing blanket, but the suspicion is already there. They bring in a physician, a round man with thinning hair and a penchant for dramatics. He peers into your eyes, presses your stomach, sniffs the inside of your wrist. Unbalanced bile, he proclaims. Too much earth, too little air. He prescribes saffron compresses for your chest and a tincture of ground pigeon bone to lighten the mood. The taste is awful. The smell lingers. But the worst part is knowing that if the baby refuses again, you might be deemed unsuitable, replaced, removed. You've heard what happens when a wet nurse is dismissed. Sometimes they're given coins and a basket of dried fruit. Sometimes they're escorted out at night. One woman, you heard, was sent to a cloistered nunnery for sanitary retirement. No one knows what that means. No one wants to ask. So you pray, not with words, not with candles, with your body, with your steadiness, with the way you hold him the next time he's brought to you, close, but not too close. He hesitates, then latches, and the room breathes again. That night, you allow yourself one victory, a pebble, small, smooth, from the palace garden path. You tuck it into the seam of your mattress, a talisman, not for luck, for memory, because no one will remember this moment but you. The day he came back, the day you stayed, and deep down, you know something else too. He did remember you, even if just by scent, even if only in the quiet way his fingers curled again around your shift ribbon. He knows you, not by name, not by title, but by milk, warmth, rhythm, by love. They give you silk slippers, not for comfort, for ceremony. It's a feast day, a holy one, marking the birthday of a long-dead saint who, according to the tapestries, performed miracles and smelled of roses even after death. The palace is bustling with preparation, garlands, sweetmeats, priests in embroidered robes, and nobles who haven't set foot in the nursery since the child was born. You are told to dress appropriately. A new gown is delivered, deep maroon with stiff embroidery at the cuffs. The slippers are butter soft, dyed with crushed mulberries, and far too pretty for someone who spends most of her day with sour cloths and leaking breasts. You wear them anyway. The prince is to be presented, shown off, really, before a carefully curated group of guests, extended family, allied lords, and a visiting delegation from across the sea. He is not yet old enough to speak or walk, but that doesn't matter. His mere existence must be reaffirmed, dressed in white and gold, propped like a symbol of divine continuity. And you are to nurse him before the guests arrive, so he won't cry during the procession. You're taken to a side room, lined with candlelit sconces and mirrors framed in black wood. Two noblewomen adjust your gown. One smooths your hair. Another lifts your chin with a single finger and says, "Don't speak unless addressed, and don't smile unless he does first." He's brought in drowsy from Rosewater and the effort of having his curls tamed. You feed him silently. He sucks lazily, half asleep, and you stroke his back with the rhythm of a clock you can no longer hear. When he's done, they wipe your breast and perfume the air. A nurse takes him. Another dusts powder onto your slippers. You are not invited to the feast. Instead, you're led to a small alcove above the great hall, hidden behind an ornate lattice. From there, you can hear the music, the clink of goblets, the slow murmur of pride and ambition, as nobles discuss alliances over quail eggs and candied violets. You watch through the lattice as the prince is brought in on a velvet cushion. Applause ripples through the crowd. The queen smiles without warmth. The king lifts his goblet. He does not look up toward you, but the prince, still nestled in the nurse's arms, glances once toward the ceiling. Just for a second, and you know he can't see you. Not really. But something in you lifts anyway. A phantom thread drawn taut between your ribs and his heartbeat. You press your hand to your chest and breathe through your nose, slow and quiet. Later, back in your chamber, you find a gift on your bed. A gold button, shaped like a star. No note, no explanation. You hide it beneath your mattress, beside the pebble. That night, the physician comes for your weekly check-in. He examines your pulse, your tongue, your milk. Then he leans back and says, "Your temperament has improved. The prince thrives. You'll be kept on." Just like that. Like you're a tool with a functioning hinge. Not a person who cried alone when the child was taken. Not someone who learned to silence her lullabies. Just kept on. Historians suggest some wet nurses formed lifelong bonds with their royal charges, secret visits, whispered confidences, even letters years later. But for every nurse remembered, 100 more faded into the walls of palaces, unnamed and unmarked. You wonder which one you'll be. The next morning, you're given an extra piece of fruit at breakfast, a pear, soft and sweet. You save half for later, wrap it in cloth, and tuck it beside your bed as if it's treasure, because in a place like this, it is. Later, you overhear two ladies in waiting whispering outside the nursery. One says, "Have you seen her hands? Like a milkmaid's?" The other replies, "She is a milkmaid." They laugh. You don't correct them. You don't emerge from the nursery. You stay seated, quiet, humming in your throat as the baby sleeps in your arms, one fist curled over your heart. You're not here to impress them. You're here for him. And though you'd never dare say it aloud, you think it now, for the first time, with absolute clarity. He's a prince. Yes, but he is yours, too. You notice the baby is changing. His legs are thicker now, his eyes less cloudy, more curious. He reaches for things with purpose. He laughs, an actual gurgling laugh that bubbles out from his belly and surprises everyone around him. The first time it happens during feeding, you nearly cry, but you don't. You bite your lip and keep rocking. He recognizes you now, not just as a provider, but as something familiar. When other hands lift him, he fusses. When you enter the room, his gaze follows. Sometimes he'll twist toward your chest even before he's hungry. Other times he lays his cheek against your breast and just listens to your breath, your heartbeat, the quiet you keep locked under your ribs. He knows you, and that's when it becomes dangerous. One morning, after an unusually long feeding, the supervising nurse pulls you aside. She's young, sharp-eyed, smells faintly of vinegar. You've never liked her. "The prince is growing too fond of you," she says, folding her arms. He calms for no one else. You don't know what to say. That seems good. Attachment is not the goal. Security is. She narrows her eyes. His affection must be shaped by duty, not comfort. You want to say, "He's a baby," but you don't. Instead, you nod and thank her. Then go back to your chamber where you clench your fists into the coarse wool of your blanket until your knuckles go white. Historians still wrestle with this contradiction. Royal households often demanded deep care from wet nurses, but punished emotional closeness. The line between nurturer and threat was always shifting, always thin. You begin to feel it closing in. The baby's preferences have become public. A visiting noble remarks during a nursery viewing, "Look how he turns toward her, like a kitten to its mother." That earns you a sharp look from the queen's cousin. 2 days later, the schedule changes. You're assigned a chaperone. Not for the baby, for you. She's quiet, unreadable, with ink-stained fingers and a knack for always arriving just before a private moment. If you hold the baby too long after feeding, she clears her throat. If you murmur anything, not even lullabies, just anything, she scribbles on a little slate. You don't know what she reports. You never see the notes, but you see the effect. One evening, your dinner arrives late and cold. Your blanket goes missing again. You're no longer allowed in the nursery during off hours. The small pebble you tucked under your mattress is gone. Someone has searched your things. You feel stripped, not of clothing or title, but of the tiny things that made this bearable. The next morning, you're summoned to the physician. He pokes at your stomach, checks your pulse, sniffs your breath. Too much warmth in the chest, he says vaguely. You'll begin taking saffron wine with breakfast. It tempers sentiment. It tastes like burnt flowers and rust. They are trying to cure you of feeling. You hold the baby more carefully now. Less cradle, more cradleboard. You smile less. You sing not at all. He notices. You see it in the way his brow furrows, in the questioning coo he gives when your lips don't move. You're terrified he'll forget you, but he doesn't. One night, during a storm that rattles the shutters and smells of damp stone, the baby wakes wailing. The nursery staff rush about, warming cloths, checking the fire, calling for the physician. Nothing works until they bring him to you. You take him, hard in your throat, and press him close. No milk yet, just warmth, just presence. He buries his face in your neck and breathes, ragged and shuddery, until the sobbing stops. No feeding, no lullaby, just the sound of rain on the windows and your hand gently rubbing his back. The nurse supervisor watches from the doorway. For once, she says nothing. Later, after he's asleep and back in his cradle, she approaches you in the hall. You'll need to be careful, she says, not unkindly. You meet her eyes. He only needed comfort. And who will he expect it from in a year? She replies softly. When you're gone? You don't answer, because the truth is, you don't know. That night, you sit awake by candlelight. You take the remaining half of the pear, now brown and soft, and eat it slowly, as if it's a sacrament. And you make a decision. If your name will never be carved in stone, if your voice will never be remembered in the annals, then he must carry something of you that they cannot erase. Not your songs, not your words, but your steadiness, your stillness, your warmth, a memory in the bones, a whisper in the blood. You begin again in the morning. No more looks that linger. No more softness in your arms. You will be milk. You will be rhythm. You will be the thing he needs, but only just enough. The palace begins to hum with plans, not for you, of course, but for the child. A visiting astrologer charts the stars and declares the prince's milk years nearly over. A bishop suggests it's time to begin prayers over his crib instead of lullabies. The queen's cousin commissions miniature portraits to send abroad, and there's talk of early betrothal proposals, even though the child still drools in his sleep. The weaning is approaching. Not yet. Not tomorrow. But soon enough that everyone starts looking at you differently, like an heirloom that's about to be boxed up and stored. You see it in the way the laundry maid stops folding your linen so precisely. The cook no longer sends you a sugared fig now and then. Even the physician visits less often, as if your usefulness is gradually being retired. But you are not retired. Not yet. The baby still nurses, hungrily, rhythmically. He pulls at your shift like he knows what's coming and doesn't want to let go. And you? You savor every minute, every sleepy sigh, every little hiccup against your chest, because you're counting backwards now. Every feeding could be the last. You're not alone in this strange purgatory. The other wet nurses know the signs. 2, 1. Assigned to a young viscount's daughter, has already been dismissed. She walks the gardens now with red-rimmed eyes and no child in her arms. Another wears makeup suddenly, cheeks rouged like she's trying to remember who she was before the milk. You share glances in the hallway, muted solidarity, no words, but it's not just the looming end. It's the subtle changes in how you're treated. A guard who used to nod now stares straight ahead. The nurse supervisor, once sharp but fair, now speaks to you like you're slow to understand. And one morning, your slippers go missing. No explanation, no apology. You walk barefoot on cold stone floors, and no one notices or cares. You're invisible in a way that hurts more than insults ever could. And then come the strange rituals. They begin to prepare the child, not in ways you expect. No firm talk of "you're a big boy now." No gentle redirection to porridge or spoon. No. Instead, they smudge his forehead with ash from dried peach pits, an old court custom to dull the appetite of longing. A priest chants over his cradle while he sleeps. His cradle linens are changed from soft blue to pale ivory, symbolizing purity and the end of maternal dependence. You aren't invited to the ceremonies, but you hear the bells. You smell the incense. They're building a wall around him, one you're not meant to cross. And still, you show up. You feed him with practiced calm, even as your heart pounds like a bird in a jar. You don't cry. You don't hum. You don't ask questions. But he knows something's different. He clings more, cries more when taken away. One evening, after a longer than usual separation, he tries to latch to your collarbone in desperation. You redirect him gently, but your throat tightens. They say babies don't remember this age. That memory comes later. That this is all instinct and reflex and biology. But they are wrong, because something in him remembers you, even if no one else will. And yet, you're reminded how fragile this role is, how disposable your presence can be. One morning, you wake to find your chamber rearranged. Your daughter's tiny comb, once tucked safely in your drawer, is gone. So is the frayed ribbon you kept wrapped around your comb. In their place is a folded note written in clipped script. Personal items will be returned upon transition. You don't need to ask what transition means. You hold the note all day in the sleeve of your dress. It burns against your skin. You're not supposed to keep it, but you do. It's proof that they're already writing you out of the story. That afternoon, while the baby sleeps against your shoulder, you whisper the village rhyme under your breath for the first time in weeks, the one you're not supposed to say, just the first verse, just once. He doesn't understand the words, but he still smiles, and that's enough. Later, the nurse supervisor finds you alone, folding the muslin wraps. "There will be a new feeding schedule starting tomorrow," she says without looking at you. "He'll begin taking goat's milk." "From a vessel." Your throat goes dry. "Will I still?" "Until further notice," she replies curtly. "But we expect the process to complete within a fortnight." 2 weeks? 14 days? That's all? You bow? Not because you agree, because there's nothing else to do. Back in your chamber, you place the note with the star-shaped button and the missing pebble. These are your relics now? Your proof? Your private archive? No one will write your name in the palace records, but you've etched it into a deeper place. He will not remember you with his mind, but maybe his bones will. They bring in another woman. She wears green silk and carries herself like someone who's never been expected to serve anyone in her life. But she smiles at everyone, too brightly, too often. And the way she glances around the nursery feels like she's already imagining how she'll rearrange it. You're told she's a transition wet nurse, not a replacement, not officially, just someone to ease the change. She's introduced to you, but not the other way around. She knows your name. You're never told hers. She begins by observing. She stands in the corner, hands neatly folded, while you feed the baby. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't comment, but you can feel her watching, eyes crawling over the rhythm of your hands, the tilt of your shoulder, the angle of your arm. The baby doesn't like her, not at first. When she tries to touch him, he stiffens. When she holds him, he cries. You don't say anything, but you feel a terrible, private vindication that makes you ashamed of yourself. You should want him to accept her for his own comfort, his future, but you don't. You want him to need you just a little longer. That night, you wrap your own shift tighter around yourself and sit by the candle for hours, doing nothing, not sleeping, not thinking, just existing. Historians rarely mention these intermediary nurses, women used during the weaning period to break emotional bonds, but they existed, quietly, efficiently, like a chisel separating marble from form. The next day, the new nurse is allowed to feed him. He screams. You are not allowed to intervene. You stand nearby, watching helplessly as he pushes away from her, red-faced and trembling, eyes searching for someone. You. She tries again. He flails. She hisses something under her breath, too soft to catch, but sharp. A nurse gently takes him back and soothes him. They hand him to you. You don't want to smile, but he latches immediately. Quiet, peaceful. The silence in the room becomes thick, unspoken. You are still his anchor, but not for long. The new schedule begins. Every other feeding goes to the transition nurse. The rest still come to you. You are being phased out like a song people no longer hum aloud. Your milk is still flowing, still healthy. You can feel it. But fewer bells ring now. Fewer footsteps come to your door. And when they do, it's often to bring broth or send a new instruction, not the child. Your own body begins to rebel. You feel sore, full, unused. The milk aches in you, waiting for a mouth that no longer comes as often. You bind your chest loosely, hoping to ease the discomfort, but there's no relief, only dull, sour burn. One night, during your reduced schedule, you're allowed to feed him just once. He's half asleep when they bring him, clutching a small wooden rattle he doesn't seem to know he's holding. You take him. He nurses. You try not to close your eyes, try not to memorize the moment too clearly, but then he looks at you, not passively, not vaguely. He looks at you, as if trying to figure something out, your name, your place, your absence, and then he pulls away, not because he's finished, but because he wants to see your face. You don't cry, but your chest heaves once, just once. That's when the transition nurse enters. We need to regulate timing, she says flatly. 10 minutes only. You nod and hand him over, gentler than you've ever done anything. He doesn't cry, but he looks back. Not at her, at you. Later that night, you find the rattle tucked under your pillow. No note, just a small, wooden memory. You don't tell anyone. You don't return it. Instead, you hold it in your hands until the candle burns low, and then you wrap it in a handkerchief and place it alongside your other tokens, the pebble, the note, the star button, the pear stem long dried. Your shrine to a child that was never yours. You've fed him for months, more than a season, less than a lifetime, but it was a life, yours, and now it's ebbing. The baby is ill. It starts with a cough, dry, high-pitched, almost delicate. At first, the nurses wave it off. Palace air, one mutters. Spring dust, but the cough deepens. It comes in bursts now, loud enough to echo off the marble. He cries more, sleeps less. His skin is clammy, his eyes too bright. By the second evening, the court physician is summoned in the middle of the night. You're not allowed into the nursery. You wait in your chamber, pacing between the narrow walls like a caged fox, ears straining for any sound. You try to pray, but the words stick in your throat. You try to sleep, but your arms twitch from habit, waiting for a wait that doesn't come. At dawn, they call for you. The moment you enter, you smell it. Fever and milk souring in the air, mingled with the faint tang of herbal compresses. The prince lies in his cradle, red-faced and shivering under too many layers of linen. The nurse attending him looks exhausted. So does the physician. He refuses the goat's milk, the nurse says tightly. Hasn't taken any in hours. They look at you. You don't ask permission. You simply sit, unwrap him gently, and bring him close. He latches immediately, not like before, not with lazy contentment, but with urgency, with desperation. His fists clench, then relax. His breathing evens, just a little. The room doesn't exhale, but you do. Only later do you notice that the transition nurse is watching from the doorway, arms folded. She says nothing. Historians tell us that wet nurses were often scapegoated when royal children fell ill. If the child survived, the nurse had done her duty. If not, suspicion bloomed like rot. Whispers of bad milk, of jealous curses, of peasant humors, infecting pure blood. You know this. So when the baby's fever returns 2 nights later, you're not surprised when the questioning begins. What have you eaten? Have you touched unclean cloth? Have you been near your own child recently? That last one hits hardest. You haven't seen your daughter in weeks, not since they began preparing the prince for weaning. She's somewhere in the servants' wing now. Looked after, they said. Always that phrase. Looked after. You answer their questions calmly. You submit to the examination. Eyes, tongue, breast. They find nothing, but suspicion lingers like a shadow in the corners of the room. The prince recovers slowly. He feeds from you, and only you for 2 days, while the goat's milk is set aside. You rock him longer than you're supposed to. You whisper nonsense syllables into his neck when no one's watching. You think, foolishly, maybe this has earned you a reprieve. It hasn't. Because the moment his fever breaks, the physician declares it's time to resume the weaning. The interruption has only delayed his independence, he says, as if feeding a sick child was indulgence rather than survival. You aren't angry. You are beyond anger. What you feel now is something flatter, quieter, the stillness of knowing that no amount of care will change your fate. You are not family. You are not nursemaid. You are not mother. You are milk. And milk is only good until it spoils. That night, a scribe visits your chamber. He is young and shy, and can't meet your eye as he hands you a new scroll. Instructions, he mutters, regarding your schedule. The scroll outlines a tapering routine, fewer feedings, then none. A date is set, 10 days from now. After that, you'll be reassigned to duties more suitable to your station. The language is soft. The message is not, you are being dismissed, but not yet. There are still 10 days, 10 feedings, maybe fewer. You hold the scroll long after the scribe leaves. You read it by candlelight 3 times, then fold it neatly and tuck it with your other treasures. The next morning, you feed the child with a reverence so complete it feels religious. He nuzzles into you with the easy familiarity of trust. You don't cry, but your hands shake when you hand him back. The nurse takes him without looking at you. Your breasts ache from absence. The schedule now calls for a feeding once every other day, sometimes less, if the child takes goat's milk or soft porridge, and when he doesn't, they blame you. He must learn to separate, the nurse supervisor says firmly. Your presence delays his maturity. You nod. Of course. What else can you do? But the ache is not only physical, it's emotional, gnawing, like hunger in reverse, a strange emptiness that grows each day. You're not needed. Your body doesn't understand. It still prepares, still lets down at the sound of a baby's cry, even when it's not him. Worse, your room is now beside the nursery, but not part of it. You hear the bells you no longer answer. You hear his fussing at midnight and know they do not come for you. And when they do, it's different now. They hand him to you like a parcel. No softness, no words. He reaches for you instinctively, Manda. But you feel a shift in his gaze. Less expectation, more confusion. Already, the bond is fraying. He nurses, but not as long. He doesn't rest against you afterward. He's learning, they say, growing independent. You feel like you're being erased. There's a strange ceremony on the 5th day. The queen herself comes to the nursery. You're warned hours in advance. You're bathed, dressed in new linen. Your hair is braided. A thin gold band is laid across your brow. The physicians inspect your breath, your hands, your milk. You are not to speak. When the queen enters, she is smaller than you expected. Not fragile, controlled. Every movement is precise, every word rehearsed. She sits beside the cradle and watches you feed her son. It is the first and only time. She does not smile, but her eyes soften, not at you, at him. When he unlatches, she leans forward and touches his cheek. Then, to your surprise, she looks at you. You hold her gaze for one full breath. She nods once. That is all. After she leaves, the nurse supervisor whispers, "You're fortunate." She didn't frown, but it doesn't feel like fortune. It feels like a closing door. After that, things move quickly. The transition nurse begins to handle him more. She bathes him, feeds him porridge with crushed dates, carries him during walks in the gallery. You are no longer needed for anything but milk. And soon, not even that. You see it coming. You feel it in the way people stop bowing, in the way your meals come cold again, in how no one corrects the page who forgets your name and calls you the old nurse. Though you are barely 30, your body responds with confusion. Your breasts swell painfully, but no one comes. You wake at night to phantom cries and damp sheets. You're told to bind your chest tighter, to drink mint and cabbage water. It will dry you up, they say. You feel yourself drying up in more ways than one. But still, he remembers, even if he isn't supposed to. Even if they try to train it out of him. One afternoon, you pass by the garden where he's being walked. He sees you from the arms of a nursemaid and begins to squirm. He reaches one small arm in your direction. You don't stop. You're not allowed. But your pace slows. Just enough. He cries. Not a wail. A whimper. Quiet. Confused. Soft. You keep walking. Later. Back in your room. You find the linen cloth you used to wrap his feeding bibs. It's been folded and placed on your bed. Nothing else. No explanation. Just a square of faded blue muslin that smells faintly of lavender and milk. You fold it again and place it with the others, the pebble, the rattle, the pear stem, the gold button, the parchment oath, and now, the cloth, your legacy, not in portraits, not in coins, not in name, but in these small secret proofs that you were here, that you mattered, that for one brief, strange season, you were the most important woman in the palace, and soon you'll be gone. Not with fanfare, but with silence. They tell you the final feeding will be tomorrow. No ceremony, no thank you. Just a note delivered by a nurse's apprentice with a mouth too full of teeth and eyes that won't meet yours. You hold the note for a long time, unread. You already know what it says. One more feeding, one more moment. Then you will hand him over and walk out of his world. There is no precedent for this kind of goodbye. No script for a woman who nursed a prince, but has no claim to him. You're not a mother, not a servant, exactly. You're a chapter the palace plans to forget. But he won't forget. Not yet. That night, you don't sleep. Instead, you sit on your cot with your bundle of treasures laid out before you like relics. The pebble, the rattle, the star-shaped button, the muslin cloth, all silent, all charged with meaning that no one else will see. You add a sixth item, a sliver of candle wax from the nursery, melted into the shape of a teardrop. You found it stuck under the feeding stool yesterday. You couldn't explain why it mattered, but it does. You hold it in your palm like a prayer. When the sun rises, everything is quiet. The palace is hushed in that strange, suspended way it gets before some new event, someone's arrival, a changing wind, an omen no one can name aloud. You're called earlier than usual. The nurse who fetches you is gentle. She doesn't say much, but she walks a little slower, opens doors more softly. She knows. Everyone does. In the nursery, the child is dressed in a new gown, ivory silk. His hair is brushed, soft and curling at the edges. He reaches for you before you sit down. You take him, and you feed him. There's no need to rush. No one interrupts. The room is strangely empty. Just you and the child, and the faint echo of birdsong beyond the shutters. He nurses slowly, deeply, as if he knows this is different. He pauses once, looks up at you, then latches again with a sigh that feels centuries old. You memorize everything, the weight of him, the warmth, the tiny way his fingers curl into your gown, the scent of his hair, the faint scar near his ear from when he rolled off a cushion 2 months ago. He unlatches on his own this time, full, satisfied. You lift him to your shoulder and pat his back, even though you know it's more for you than for him. He rests there a moment, still, breathing. You don't want to let go, but you do. You hand him off to the transition nurse. She takes him gently. She doesn't gloat. She only nods once. He doesn't cry, but his eyes follow you as you back away. You bow, and then you turn, and you walk out of the nursery for the last time. In your chamber, a small bundle waits on the cot. Your things, what little you came with, minus the personal items that were absorbed by palace stores. They've packed you traveling shoes. You laugh, softly, into your sleeve. It's not a happy sound, just breath pushed through grief. There is a knock. It's the young scribe. He hands you an envelope. From Her Majesty. He whispers. You open it after he leaves. Inside is a single card with ink so fine it could be a thread. It says, "The child is strong. Thank you." No name, no signature, but the paper smells faintly of violets. You tuck the card with the rest of your collection. Fold everything into a cloth. Wrap it tight. Tie it with the ribbon that once belonged to your daughter. You'll leave at dusk. Until then, you sit by the window, arms empty, eyes open, chest no longer aching with milk, but with something harder to name. You wonder if he's crying. You hope he isn't. You hope he forgets the ache before he remembers the face. You hope, selfishly, desperately, that some part of him doesn't. The cart they place you on has no canopy. It rattles along the outer wall of the palace, past gardens you never walked through, gates you never passed beneath. No one waves. No one watches. The guards don't even meet your eyes. You are not being dismissed with shame, but neither are you being honored. You are simply being removed. The ride is quiet. Your bundle rests in your lap. Your hands press against it like it's the only part of you still solid. Inside, the relics, the ribbon, the note, the pebble, the button, the tiny rattle. You didn't pack food. You didn't think to, or maybe you didn't want to. The driver doesn't speak. You don't ask where you're going. It doesn't really matter. It will be somewhere out of sight, out of mind. A cottage, perhaps, or a wing of the old infirmary, or a guest house used only during harvest festivals. You doze. In your dream, the baby is crying. You walk into the nursery, arms outstretched, but he's not there. Just the cradle, empty, swaddled with lavender-scented cloth, still warm, but empty. You wake with a start when the cart lurches to a stop. The building they assign you is clean, but sparse. Stone walls, a straw mattress, a basin, a chair, nothing soft, no curtains, no lullabies. And yet, your daughter is waiting there. You nearly collapse when you see her. She is taller, thinner, her eyes older than you remember, but she still knows you. She doesn't run into your arms. She waits. She watches. She assesses. Then she says, "Are you my mother again?" You drop your bundle. You kneel. You say yes. You say it like a promise and an apology wrapped in one. She lets you hold her, awkwardly, stiffly, but then her arms slip around your neck, and you both begin to cry. Not loudly, not in gasps, just quietly, in the deep, dry sobs of two people who forgot what they were waiting for until it arrived. There's food in the cupboard, a loaf of bread, 2 apples, a wedge of cheese, a jug of watered wine. You eat with her in silence. You learn that she was passed from one maid to another, that she slept near the laundry rooms, that she asked for you every day until she stopped. You press your lips to her brow and whisper, "I'm here now." It's the truest thing you've said in weeks. That night, after she's asleep beside you, curled so tightly into your side it feels like you've regrown a limb, you unpack your bundle, the button, the pebble, the card, the cloth, and at the very bottom, the note, now creased, the ink faded. Personal items will be returned upon transition. But of course, not all were. You search the bundle again, just in case. But no, one item is missing. The wooden rattle, the one he left beneath your pillow. The one that smelled like honeyed milk and lavender powder and everything he was. You sit in silence, holding the empty cloth. It's gone. And in its place, memory, not a sound, not a shape, Not an object you can touch? Just the weight of him against your chest, just the half sigh after a long feed, just the tiny, perfect way his fingers used to curl around your gown, just him. The days begin to stretch. There's no more schedule, no bells, no pale hands tapping on your door before sunrise. Just light, then darkness, hunger, then sleep. The ache in your chest fades. First the physical one, as your milk dries, then the stranger one, slower, duller, lodged somewhere deeper. Your daughter watches you closely at first. She's not sure you'll stay. When you bathe her hair in the copper basin and hum the village tune she used to love, she stares as if trying to decide if it's a memory or a performance. You keep humming. Eventually, she hums too. That's when you know you've started to return. You've always read that the bond between a wet nurse and her own child frays during service. Sometimes it breaks altogether. You were warned. Don't expect her to come to you, they said. Children adjust to who feeds them. But she did come, and you didn't expect how tightly she would cling, not just with her arms bitchy, but with questions. Did he cry more than me? Was he nicer than me? Did he love you? You don't know how to answer. So you tell her the only truth you can manage. I missed you so much it made my bones hurt. She doesn't respond, but that night she tucks her foot beneath your knee when she sleeps. A quiet act of trust. You begin to gather herbs again, from the edges of the garden wall, from between the stones. Lavender, comfrey, mint, not for palace tonics, for tea, for comfort. You don't speak of the palace, but sometimes, while she draws birds in the dirt with a stick, your mind wanders back. You imagine him, toddling now. Maybe. You hope. You picture him being weaned fully, handed over to a series of tutors with tight collars and looser morals. You picture him sitting still as someone pins royal regalia onto his tiny shoulders. You imagine his eyes drifting toward a corner of the room, as if searching for something he can't name. Do they speak your name there? No, they wouldn't. Wet nurses are not remembered. Historians, when they mention you, will reduce your life to 3 words. The prince's nurse. No lineage, no family, no face. You are a utility, a biological stopgap between womb and throne. But the body remembers what the mind is told to forget. He will forget your voice, but maybe the rhythm will echo somewhere. He will forget the smell of your skin, but perhaps it will comfort him, years later, in a hallway that smells faintly of lavender. He will forget your touch, but maybe, when he becomes a man, he'll close his eyes one night and wonder why he can't sleep without resting one hand over his heart. You are not in his story, but you are in his bones. That is enough. It must be. One morning, weeks later, your daughter brings you something. It's a carved wooden button, not star-shaped, not gold, but shaped like a leaf. She found it while playing near the path where the carts arrive. You turn it over in your palm. It's smooth, simple, whole. You add it to your bundle, not because it belongs to the palace, because it belongs to now, the present, the you who is returning, the you who stayed. And as you hang a line of washing to dry in the wind, your daughter chasing grasshoppers behind you, you begin to hum again, not for the prince, not for memory, for you. The seasons shift. You notice it first in the light, the way it slants earlier, yellower, across the stone floor of your room. Then in the trees, their leaves dulling at the edges, autumn creeping in, soft-footed and sure. Your daughter grows into the rhythm of country days. She gathers kindling before you ask. She sings to herself while sorting beans. She no longer flinches when you raise your hand to tuck her hair behind her ear. That alone feels like a miracle. You get used to life without clocks. You wake with the birds and sleep when the sky swells full of stars. No bells ring, no pages knock, no one weighs your breath or sniffs your food or asks if you've dreamt of drowning. And yet, he is still there. Not literally, not even vividly, but the shape of him lingers, like a pressed flower forgotten between pages, a weightless outline. Some nights, you wake with the urge to rise, to ready yourself, to warm your hands in water, but there is no bell, no child, no reason. So, you lie back down and remind your heart where it is now. Still, memories arrive uninvited, the way his mouth used to purse after feeding, like he was tasting a secret, the tiny star-shaped mark on his knee, the feel of his weight against your hip when you stood too long by the window. You have no drawing of him, no keepsake, not even a thread from the linen you used to wrap him, just memory, and milkless breasts that still ache when you think too hard. One morning, a traveler arrives, a merchant passing through with ribbon and dye, and 2 cages of drowsy birds. Your daughter hurries to see the birds, eyes wide. You trade dried mint for a length of thread, the color of egg yolk. The merchant talks as he barters. You don't intend to listen, but then you hear, "The prince took his first steps, slipped on a velvet cushion," they say, and everyone panicked, but he laughed. They say he laughs often. You still, strong lungs, they say, cries at tutors, clings to a nursemaid. Yet you ask, softly, "The same nursemaid?" The man shrugs. "No, no, some new one. They cycle them through. Can't have him getting attached." You nod. "Of course not." He barters and moves on. You sit with the ribbon in your lap. He walks now. He laughs. He clings, but not to you. That evening, you take the bundle from beneath your cot. You unwrap it slowly. The pebble, the button, the muslin cloth, the card, the parchment, the rattle. No, not the rattle. You still think of it as there, though it's not. In its place, the emptiness becomes another item in the collection. You add the yellow thread, tie it around the button. You're not sure why. Maybe to honor the step he took. Maybe to mark that your part in his life is still spinning outward, even as the story moves on without you. You think, sometimes, of writing him a letter, not to send, of course, just to write. To say things like, "You used to hold my finger like it was the whole world. Adi, you taught me how to be needed and forgotten at the same time. I hope the soft part of you never hardens entirely, but you don't write. You whisper those things to the night air, let them dissolve. He will never hear them, and that, in a way, is the point. Because your job was never to be remembered. It was to disappear, to give everything, and leave no trace, except what settles in the bones." The wind carries a different kind of chill now, not bitter, not yet, but edged. The kind that tucks itself under your sleeves when you're not paying attention. The kind that tells you, summer is over. You're in the garden, gathering rosemary sprigs, when your daughter brings you a letter. Not from the palace, from the village priest. It's thin, formal, a request to speak about your return. There's no threat, but there's no warmth either. You go the next morning. He offers you tea. You accept. You sit across from him, hands folded, body calm in the way only someone who's been through a different kind of storm can be. You were away some time, he says. You nod. Yes. And now you're back, but changed. You smile. Aren't we all? He clears his throat. The villagers. They talk. They say you were with the prince. You say nothing. He tries again. That you fed him. You meet his eyes. I did. He nods slowly. And yet here you are, as if nothing happened. You pause. Then you say, something did happen, but not everything leaves a mark you can see. He stares at you for a moment, then, softly, there's a boy in the village with a cough. They wonder if you might help. You understand what he's saying. You're back, but not quite who you were. They want to know what that means. So you go. You visit the boy. You brew time tea. You place your hand on his forehead, and he quiets. Not because of magic, not because of power, because you are calm, because your hands are steady, because you know what it is to hold a life in the small space between inhale and exhale. You become useful again, not revered, not admired, useful, and that is enough. In the evenings, you sit with your daughter by the fire. She tells you things now about moss frogs, and how her left shoe is cursed, and how she dreams of living in a house with windows on the ceiling. You listen. You tell her stories too, but not that one. Not about the prince. Not about the gold-threaded cradle or the muslin wraps or the way he once fell asleep with his lips still touching your skin. Those memories are yours, tucked beneath your ribs, where no one can take them. You never return to the palace. You never try to visit. But once, a year later, a traveling portrait artist passes through. He unrolls his canvas on the inn's table. It's not well rendered, more gesture than detail. But you know those eyes. You know that brow. The prince, older now, barely a toddler, posed stiffly beside a polished wooden horse, one hand raised. In the background, a nursemaid, mostly obscured, just a smear of color. Her face turned away. You study the painting for a long time. You pay 1 coin to have the artist sketch you a copy, just the background, just that blurred figure. You take it home, roll it carefully, and place it among your bundle. The collection is a little worn now. The paper edges soft, the muslin yellowed, the pebbles smoother from years of handling. The button still glints faintly when caught by firelight. You don't look at them every day, but sometimes, when your daughter sleeps late, when the air smells like fennel, when the sky glows with that peculiar palace gold, you unwrap them, not to mourn, to remember, to whisper, softly, you were mine, for a moment, and I was yours. So now, as the fire dims and the shadows lengthen along the walls of your room, you find yourself breathing a little slower. Your hands are folded in your lap. The world is quiet again. No bells, no footsteps, no cries in the night. Just the soft rustle of the wind through the rosemary outside your window, and the steady rise and fall of your daughter's breathing beside you. Your body no longer aches with fullness. Your arms no longer brace for the weight of someone else's child. The palace is far behind you now, its stone walls, its velvet secrets, its gilded silence, but you carry it. Not in your name, not in your station, in the rhythm of your breath, in the quiet dignity of care given without claim. You were a vessel, a guardian, a mother in all but name, and though your story may never be carved in marble or penned in royal ledgers, it lives on, in the skin, in the bones, in the echo of lullabies that never had words. You rest now, not forgotten, not erased, just gently placed back in the quiet fold of the world. You did your part. You gave everything. And now, you let go. Sleep well. Listener, let the past settle like dust in golden light. You are safe here. You are still here. And somewhere, perhaps in a distant palace, a grown man dreams of a woman he never knew, whose arms once held the world steady around him. End of script. Sweet dreams.